Hey there, welcome back. It's time for the golden age of DC Comics, 365 days, and wherein I'm going through one of my old favorite coffee table books, given to me almost 2 decades ago by one of my best friends, and that has surfed every single one of my coffee tables since. I've read this, I've thumbed through it, friends have thumbed through it. It's been a conversation starter on many occasions. It's a really nice coffee table book. What goes great with coffee table book and coffee table talk? Oh, hot, delicious coffee. That's indeed. I love coffee. So, the golden age of comics, yeah, it lasted for DC Comics, was between 1938 and 1955. The Silver Age begins in 1956. The Bronze Age begins in 1974, about. And what was the past and current age? That's a good conversation. Leave a comment in the comment section and let me know what you think. I wanna hear that conversation as well. What is the current age we're in, and was the past age the age of heroes in the mold of Hesiod, in the five ages of man? And but yeah, it is February the 22nd. Ooh, this is an eyeful, and this is a war comic, and what was smack dab in the middle of the golden age of comic books was World War II. And just coming out of the Great Depression as well. This is from Boy Commandos number 4, fall of 1943. Art by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby, the King. This is from the cover of the magazine, and it's a blow-up of the Boy Commandos themselves. Yes, these were... this was like... the Boy Commandos. We covered them earlier. They seem to be a multiracial, multi-ethnic, multinational squad of boys, of young teens, preteens, or tweens, or even just full-blown teenagers, not old enough for conscription, which was 18 years old. Actually, there was a national draft. And every able-bodied man between 18 and 64 could be drafted. And during the time of this, during World War II, I actually looked this up because I thought it was pertinent to the conversation. I'm getting this information from Quora, and so prima facie, I'll find this to be, on the level. It was done by Nathan Hawkins, an IT specialist, answered 4 years ago. The question was, what was the average age of an American soldier in World War II? His answer is this. It's a pretty good answer. The average age of a soldier during World War II was 26. This number is skewed, however, as the national draft in the U.S. meant every able-bodied man between 18 and 64 years old could be drafted. The average age of an infantryman, an enlisted non-officer, was around 22. The average age of a private was around 20. So not too far off from boyhood. Very young people going off to war. One of my best friends who chimes in a lot of the time, MC, he'll tell you that... comic books are a great form of entertainment even to this day for shipping out. Being overseas. He's a member of the armed forces, and he served. And thank you for your service, and thank you for all of your service. All the veterans of the past and the present and the future. God bless you all. Thank you. But yeah, so these are the Boy Commandos, and let's read. It's February 22nd. Let's read this. Inspired by the raid of British commandos, Joe Simon and Jack Kirby introduced another of their many kid groups, the Boy Commandos, in 1942. Like the Blackhawks, The squad members came from several allied countries. The fan favorite was Brooklyn, the tough type who sported a derby hat and carried a Tommy gun in a violin case. Canonically, Kirby would say that this kid, Brooklyn, grows up to be Detective Dan Turpin of the Superman comic books. His cohorts include England's Alfie Twidget, Holland's Jan Hansen, and France's Pierre Chavard, later absently minded, called Andre. Theoretically, under the adult supervision of Captain Rip Carter, these boys were thrown into harm's way even more gratuitously than most comic book kids. You know, Speedy, Robin, Toro, you know, Captain Marvel Jr., the list goes on and on. And in their heyday, Simon reports, they sold more than 1 million copies per issue. Yeah, 1943, the fall, and February 22nd is the day that we're checking out in this book here. And something that I wanted to talk about, yeah, I'll talk about comic books for a couple of minutes here, and it's the important and the impact of the newsstand on comic book sales. I watch a lot of YouTube capsule videos that talk about the comic book industry. It's not just the story, the characters, and the non-delusional parasocial relationships we have, or I have, with the characters that I buy and follow. It's not just that. That the comic books industry is part of something bigger. Sometimes we lose fact, and this modern fuss about characters and story and who is the true fan and what new can be accepted and when it violates the old, and yeah, sometimes we get lost in a miasma of those thoughts when in fact that the stories are just, you know, they're coming from certain, coming from media. In specific, the medium was pulp. Was print publication. And the impact that newsstands had on comic books has not been replaced to this day. Comic books are really now a very niche market. And the direct market means a comic book store, your local comic shop. I'm in Boston. I'm blessed to have several. Kamikaze in Davis Square, Million Year Picnic in Harvard Square. Hey, Tony, what's up? New England Comics next door. I mean, Matt has been giving me comics for years, and New England Comics in Quincy. I used to go to the original in the Rotary. That's where I bought my copies of X-Men 154 and 155. The first issues I ever bought, you know, for as a back issue to have as like, oh my God, I got these, you know. And I was a kid, yeah. And before they moved down the street to the strip mall kind of, you know, location on Hancock Street there. Yeah, there used to be a smaller, more charming NEC shop in the Rotary in Quincy. I love that place. I grew up there. Basically, there was Superhero Universe 3 on the corner of Washington and Winter Street in the 1980s. It moved around the corner to West Street a couple of years after that. But man, I'm blessed to have comic book stores. But these are the only places to get comic books. Monthly floppies, individual single issues of comic books, magazines, print publications that include that have a publication date, that include advertisements, that has the company header of that it always has the masthead. It's a print publication, and the newsstand, losing the newsstand as a point of sales origin for comic books is it's very noticeable. So when there's a claim that this issue of Boy Commandos, it was issue number what? Issue 4. Issue 4 in fall of 1943 at 10 cents at the newsstand. There were no comic book stores. You got this off the newsstand or the comic book spinner rack that was at your corner store. Your corner store. I'm from Boston. Wicked good coffee. Yes. But yeah, I mean, the newsstand has never been replaced since comics has changed their focus on just being on the direct market. There's a mentality to it now, into the storytelling. 6 issues equals a trade paperback, which you can sell on a different shelf and in a different market. Now you can sell that at the Barnes and Noble, at the bookstore, and the collected editions. So, but the newsstand, that phased out in the 90s or so, or maybe when did the newsstand phase out? That's a good question. Someone leave a comment or a question or an answer there. I'll look it up too myself. We'll talk, because we're going to be talking about the newsstand more and more in these comic book conversations. I bought my first comic book off a spinner rack in East Boston at a bodega on Saratoga Street. It was an all-star squad thing. It was a reprint of the first appearance of Power Girl and All American Kid, or was he Skyman by then? But yeah, I mean, I go to the supermarket once a week, as we all do. When you're there, there's a shelf of publications. Count how many comic books are there. I always do. And you know what the number is? It's always 0. That's a newsstand. And there are no comic books on that newsstand. There are Sudoku puzzles. There's going to be Wordle books soon, Didn't the New York Times just buy that property? There's like Cosmopolitan, there's GQ, Sports Illustrated, all of our favorites. But there is no comic books, no floppies. It's been years since I've seen a floppy on the newsstand, specifically at the Stop and Shop down the street that I frequent, or the CVS pharmacy down the road where I get my prescriptions. I'm fascinated with the newsstand, and also the toy aisle. I love looking at toys. And so I always peek at the toy aisle, and I always see I look to see what comic books are on sale, what American comic books are on sale, and the answer is simple: it's always 0. And to not be accessing children at that level, in that level of interest, and then also today in 2022. The average price of a comic book is about $5. It's no longer cheap. It's no longer 10 cents in 1941 is $1.99 today. And that was the price of a comic book. And I think that is really the relative value of a comic book as well, even today. You could be selling this for $1.99. I think Todd McFarlane sells Spawn over at Image for $2.99 still. And he mops the floor on these monthly sales. But the quote-unquote DC, the big two, it's a different, and Marvel, it's a different story. And it's because they're coming from a different place. But that's all I got to say for today about the golden age of comic books. And this is, let's broach the subject of newsstand and its impact. We can see, a comic book could sell millions on the newsstand at an affordable price. And that's why these old comic books have retained a value in a collector's way. But they also have the curation of stories. This is the foundation of what we call canon and continuity. And I love talking about comic books. And if you're still tuned in, you do too. So why don't you go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, because we're going to be doing this again tomorrow. We're going to be talking about comic books for the rest of the year. So tune in tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern US and see who we're talking about when we turn the page. Thank you so very much for tuning in. Give me a like if you can. Give me a thumbs down if you didn't like this kind of content. I'm a big lad. I can handle it. and I'd like to earn your subscription. I really would. I'm an ordained minister, a spiritual guy. We get spiritual here. And I'm a professional chef. I make nutritious, delicious, and beautiful cooking hacks for you so you can share with your family at your table. So tune in. All right. God bless. Namaste. Cheers.